Donald Trump might be buying TikTok with a sovereign wealth fund he just announced.
President Donald Trump on Monday ordered the U.S. government to create, for the first time, a sovereign wealth fund within the next year and said it could be used to purchase TikTok.
This could be huge. It could be disastrous. Who knows? But we're going to dive into the details in just a moment. First thing I want to go over is this new sovereign wealth fund. I mean, Switzerland's got one, Singapore's got one, China's got one. So why not the United States? Trump signs order establishing a sovereign wealth fund that he says could buy TikTok. Key talking points. President Donald Trump signed an executive order that outlines plans for a government-run sovereign wealth fund to serve as an economic development tool. So I'm going to go over exactly what's happening. Then I'm going to give you my opinion on this. Next key talking point. Though the idea of such a U.S. fund has been brought up before, the vehicles are generally used by smaller nations with vast natural resources as well as fiscal surplus to deploy. Okay. President Donald Trump on Monday, okay, we got that, signed everything. Among the aims for the fund would be developing infrastructure such as airports, highways. So I think what the idea here is we want to bring this money in, we want to invest it, or maybe it's, hey, we want to buy assets like TikTok. And with all the profit that we're making from TikTok, we're going to go ahead and invest that into building new airports, bridges, roads, etc. Let's keep reading here. Here's a quote from the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. We're going to stand this thing up within the next 12 months. We're going to monetize the asset side of the U.S. balance sheet for the American people. Okay. I'm not really sure what he means by that. So the asset side of the United States balance sheet, let's just say you've got all this government land, you've got the parks. I'm not sure how you're going to monetize that. Or maybe what he's saying is he wants to add assets to the balance sheet of the United States, and then he wants to go ahead and monetize those. So maybe he wants to run the United States as a big hedge fund. I mean, why not? At this point in time, I mean, we financialized the economy to such a degree. Is that really outrageous anymore? After we've got the Trump coin, the Melania coin, the fart coin, the butthole coin. I mean, it's at a point where you're just like, nothing surprises me anymore. But maybe that's what he's talking about. Maybe he's talking about issuing U.S. treasuries. That would be increasing the liability side of the balance sheet and then taking the money to buy things like TikTok, yielding assets. And if the yield from TikTok exceeds the yield that you're having to pay on those treasuries, then maybe it makes sense. And then you take the delta and then you invest in a new bridge going from, I don't know, New York to New Jersey, something like that. Maybe that's the idea. Let's keep reading. So Bessent went on to say, there will be a combination of liquid assets that we have in this country as we work to bring them out for the American people. Okay, that doesn't really clarify anything for me. Let's keep reading. There were no other details other than Trump saying this is going to be great for national endeavors. Shocking. Trump saying that one of his policies is going to be great. I don't know if that's really headline news. As discussed, deal in which USB would become a partner in social media platform TikTok would be one potential use. Trump said the app has taken offline briefly. Okay, we know what's happened there recently. So here's my thoughts. I always want to start with my North Star. I always want to start from a principled position. So when it comes to things like this, the federal government, I want less. I do not want more. Now, a lot of people that are for small government favor a lot of things that increase the government, just so long as the increase in government is doing something they like. Maybe you're one of those people, and maybe there's a good argument for that. I'm just not one of those individuals, because I look at something like this, and maybe it's just me being too pessimistic, but I'm like, okay, so I don't really worry about Donald Trump owning TikTok or let's say, a majority shareholder of TikTok. But what I do worry about is the government in general, because the fact of the matter is we are only going to have Trump for the next 4 years. And there's going to be someone after that. There's going to be someone after that, someone after that, and someone after that. And there is an extremely, extremely high probability that if the government owns TikTok, while it is true the Chinese government won't be using it to spy on you, I can assure you the United States government will be using it to spy on you. Now, again, I'm not saying that Trump would do that, but I can assure you that whoever follows Trump, there's going to be someone in line there that's going to see this as a tool, just like they see the NSA. So I factor that into my analysis, because what we're doing here is we're weighing the costs and the benefits. There are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. And what Thomas Sowell means by that is there are always going to be costs and benefits. You can't just look at the costs, and you can't just look at the benefits. You have to look at the complete picture. So for me, I would prefer that TikTok stay in the private sector. I would much prefer. Yeah, I would even go so far as, even if they have Chinese investors or whatever it is. Well, I mean, I'd really have to think it through. But my first thought, which is my first concern, is number one, the government growing, because if we set up a sovereign wealth fund, then it is true the government is going to expand in that one area. Now, you could say that Trump is cutting over here and expanding over there. So on net balance, we have a reduction. Okay, I'm down with that argument all day long. But just looking at this in isolation, this would be expanding the scope of the government. It would also be expanding the government's ability to pick winners and losers. Because let's say they have $10 trillion in this sovereign wealth fund. You say, well, my gosh, that's fantastic. That's on the asset side of the United States balance sheet. And at the end of the day, those are taxpayers. Okay, yeah. But again, trade-offs here. That means that the United States can literally crush a company. So if they're a 20% shareholder in Apple, let's say, and you know what? They become like BlackRock. They basically become BlackRock. So if a company is doing something they don't like, they just say, hey, you do X, Y, or Z, Mr. CEO, or guess what we're going to do? We're going to dump 5% of our shares on the market tomorrow, and your stock is going to plummet. And you may say, George, no, that's never going to happen. Trump would never allow that. Or with Elon Musk in charge, you're creating FUD. No. I'm not saying Trump will do that. But Trump is not going to be the king of the United States for the next 100 years. You have to think about what happens after Trump. And if you're giving the government that type of power, for me, that's incredibly, incredibly, incredibly dangerous. So then that takes me back to my guiding principle and my North Star, which is, and I'm not opposed to doing another government program, but where I'm going to start from, as far as my overall analysis, is going to be that usually it's better to reduce the size of government, especially at the federal level. So I don't see how this is doing that. I think it's increasing. And it's also increasing not only the government's ability to pick winners and losers, which the tariffs do exponentially, by the way. We're going to get to that in just a moment. But it's also a complete misallocation of resources. I mean, these are going to be government contractors that are vying for these jobs. And you know how much waste goes into that, even if it is with Doge and even if it is with the Trump organization. The government just doesn't allocate resources efficiently, period. End of story, bottom line. So if they're taking the profits, let's say from TikTok, and they're building a bridge, well, there's going to be all of this bureaucracy that's involved there. And by the way, do we need any more bridges in the United States? And by the way, the infrastructure that we have in the United States is, let's just say, at a 95% level. So if you increase it to a 96% level, it really doesn't move the needle too much. Whereas a country like, let's just say, Colombia, if you increase the infrastructure there, as far as GDP, you're really, really, really going to make a huge difference, because there are no highways here. There are no bridges. There are a few tunnels. But you see, it's almost like playing golf. It's if you take a lesson in golf, you can go from shooting 100 down to 85, let's just say, pretty easy. but it's almost impossible to take one lesson and go from shooting 85 down to 70. That's that's a big difference. And the United States right now, as far as from an infrastructure standpoint, is a golfer that's like shooting 75. Even if you give him 100 lessons, it is no means definitive that he's going to go down to a scratch golfer. See, so put it in economic terms. If we spend $1 on infrastructure, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get $1 back. There might even be a negative multiplier because where we are as far as our economic development. See, so on top of that, let's just say again, we set up this fund that's making all this profit. When Trump does leave, now all of a sudden we've got the guy in charge, and Trump is setting a precedent with all of these executive orders. And now let's say they have $1 trillion of profit coming in. And oh, by the way, interest rates are still low at the long end of the curve, so we can sell as much debt as we want to. Japan taught us that. And then they're going to take this for whatever pet project they want. And the next thing you just see these resources completely being misallocated. You see malinvestment, and we go right back into Austrian Economics 101. And for what? Right? The argument would be, well, now you have this profit that you can go ahead and do these projects with. But that assumes that we're not able to sell debt to do that. And the fact of the matter is we can. Now, I get it. There's a different trade-off with selling debt as opposed to just taking profits. But for me, and this is by no means definitive, I'm just going through this, thinking through it out loud right here on the live stream. For me, this would be a net negative. For the main reason is I don't want the next guy to have this type of power, and I don't want the government to at the federal level to expand like this. Not because I'm worried about what Trump will do with it, or Elon, or Vivek, or anyone like that, but I'm worried about what happens over the next 25 years. Hey guys, I'd like to personally invite each and every one of you to attend this year's Rebel Capitalist Live. This is the incredible conference I put on annually that helps you build a bulletproof portfolio. It helps you increase your personal freedom and liberty, and also it helps you increase the size of your network. In other words, you get to meet a lot of like-minded individuals, fellow rebel capitalists. It's in Orlando, May 23rd through the 25th. Past speakers have included people like Robert Kiyosaki, Ron Paul, Peter Schiff, Mike Maloney, Lynn Alden, just to name a few. So to get your tickets ASAP and to find out who is speaking at this year's Rebel Capitalist Live, you can check it out at rebelcapitalistlive.com. And just a little quick insider information, if you get your tickets sooner than later, you can get a discount, because as we get closer and closer to the event, the tickets go up in price. So don't wait. Go to rebelcapitalistlive.com right now and get your tickets, and I will see you in Orlando, May 23rd through the 25th.